If you ever came out to your Mercedes and you saw it drop down like this, you're going to want to watch this video because I'm going to show you how you can fix it. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Drive Talk Cars. In today's video, we're going to be addressing the saggy rear end on my E63. Let's jump into the video and get this thing fixed. So the Airmatic system is basically just air suspension. The Airmatic suspension is known to have leaks. So you may be wondering, how do I know that my airbag or air spring is bad? Basically, if it's dropped down this low, then it's definitely bad. Sometimes it doesn't drop down just immediately. It may take a few hours, may take a day, but if it doesn't last and maintain air for at least a few days, I would say. I know the temperature can change it. If it's cold or hot, it may fluctuate on how fast it drops, but ideally it should hold the air for a few days. Some people even say a week or so. I guess it depends on how often you drive your car. You don't want to prolong this repair because you can damage the compressor, because with it leaking like this, the compressor is overworking and overheating, and then things start to break, and then it'd be more costly than just changing the air spring. That's why we're going to change the air spring, and we're going to do both sides just to have consistency, and that's it. So now I'm going to show you what tools you're going to need to perform this job. So first things first, you're obviously definitely going to want a floor jack as well as stands. I'm going to use two stands to mount them underneath the rear jacking points. You're going to need a 17mm socket, a 10mm socket, a ratchet wrench. I have a power one, an extendable one for like a breaker bar kind of setup, and then your regular ratchet wrench, small screwdriver, a mallet or a hammer, and some needle nose pliers. First thing we're going to do is loosen the bolts. We're using our 17mm socket. Once you loosen up the bolts, then you can proceed to jack up the car. One thing that I'm going to use is a piece of 2x4 because I'm going to use the diff as a jacking point. Jacking with the rear diff allows for both wheels to come up at the same time, and then it leaves your jacking points free to put your jack stands under. All right, so there is a dilemma. The diff is too low for the wood and the jack to go under. That's probably due because of the low airbag, the leaking airbag. So thankfully I have two more jacks. So I'm gonna jack up there on the right side, and I'm jacking on the left side to lift it up so I can get the 2x4 as well as the jack underneath the diff right there. So if you are faced with that dilemma and you don't have two extra jacks to jack up both sides so you can get your main jack and your 2x4 underneath and reach the diff, then you're gonna have to jack up one side at a time. So let's get back into the video. So now with both sides up a little bit, we should be able to get our wood under there and the jack. As you can see there, we are okay. Get the wood on there flush, and then you can jack it up. So now we're just going to take the bolts off and the wheels, and we're good to go. So sometimes your wheel is stuck to the hub. Give it a little kick, and it usually comes off. There you go. Man, these tires are kind of bad. Gonna need some new tires. Now, before you start removing any of the components on the air springs, you want to make sure you disconnect the battery. You're going to disconnect the battery so the self-leveling sensors and whatnot are not activating, trying to adjust as you're operating on the air springs. Just going to disconnect the battery. I have a video on that if you don't know how to. It'll be up above. Using the needle nose pliers, we're going to take off this plastic covering down here. They have two push tabs. You just squeeze them together and it will remove the bottom plate. right, so you can see the plastic piece. It's four of these on each corner, this side and on the other side. You take those out and then you're good. Next, we're going to pull down on the dust cover here so we can expose this airline bolt and we can unscrew that. All right, so now with a 10mm wrench, I am going to unscrew this airline. So we just want to make sure we don't damage this airline here. This is really important. All right, so now that that's out, you want to protect this and don't get any dirt in it. So I'm going to cover it up with some saran wrap until we get everything out because there's so much dirt around here. All right, just like that, you can protect from dirt going into your airline or anything like that. So you want to make sure you're really careful with this. So now the airline is out, we can compress this and get it out. So under here, you're gonna have to tap this with a mallet or some kind of hammer. Tap that so it can pop out. Okay, so in true fashion, this didn't work. So let me try my hammer. Good old hammer. All right, now that we got that out, let's go back up to the top. All right, so we gotta collapse this. Now it's just a matter of wiggling it out of here. There you have it. So as you can see, there's a lot of dirt down there in the hole where the air spring goes. Make sure you clean that out just for good measure so you can have a fresh, clean spot for your new air spring. So now that we have the old one off, we're going to put the new one in. There's a few things you need to make sure that you're aware of before you put the new one in. First, you want to make sure you have the right side because they are dependent on the correct side to go in. But there's an arrow right here as well that shows you what side to go. You should be able to see this arrow when you're placing it inside of the fitting on the control arm. Also, it's a sticker that says facing wheel. So you want this label to be facing the wheel. It's keyed at the bottom, so it can only go in one way. Then there's this part here, the airline fitting. You do not want to turn that at all. This has already been fixed and tightened by manufacturer, so you don't need to do anything with that. The only thing you need to do is remove this white piece here, and that's it. But as far as this, you keep that as is. All right, so let's install. All right, so we're gonna try to compress it and put it back in the hole that the other one came out of. So I got it in, but I had to do some elaborate engineering because this shock right here, you have to pull down on it so it can fully extend the arm. But that is really a two-person job, but I only had it myself. So I devised a plan, and here is how it went. So what I did is I put in a bolt, then I put the socket over it, the 17. And then I had a huge pipe. Put that over the socket, as you see there. That allowed for me to pull down on it, and you can see the spring going down. But that wasn't enough because I still had to get the air spring in the inside there. So I sat on this bar, and that allowed enough to get down the control arm, and then I could insert the air spring. On the right side, we were not able to do the same thing as we did on the left. So I had to unscrew the 3 bolts here from the base that's holding the air spring. That way it allowed me for more clearance. Here are the bolts. Put them in order so I know which one go to which, in which direction. If you experience where you can't get back here and get the air spring in, then that will probably be the plan B for getting the air spring in. So removing those 3 bolts give you more clearance than without removing them. Alright, so now that the bags are in, you can take off this fitting, the old one, unscrew it. That's going to expose these clamps here. You pry those apart with your small screwdriver. Make sure not to damage the line. Alright, so now that that's off, you can just pull this part off, and now you have your hose exposed. Make sure to run it behind the brake line, and you stick that in here. So you just push it in there, then you pull back a little bit so it catch, and then you're done. You don't have to touch the brass fitting or anything. Make sure you put this sensor back. Then you put your plastic cover back over the arm that holds the air spring. Don't forget to reattach the battery. All right, there you have it, guys. We got air in the bags. It inflated. Everything looks good. On this side, this is where we had the failed airbag. And as you see, it's up in the air. Alright, so it's the next morning. The airbags are still inflated on both sides. The troubled area before was the left side, and it's still holding strong. So we have another successful job. So if this video brought you any value and you enjoyed it, please give me that thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already, please click that subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you don't miss out on any future videos. And remember, do it until you can't. Until next time, I'm out.